Okay, so this is the vlog for April 30th, 2018. And it's been a bit of a weird day. It's been a hectic day. I'm tuckered out from work, and I'm ready to go play some video games and relax for a bit. And probably go to bed a little bit early tonight. And on the way home, I thought of something to talk about, of course. Now it's out of my head. There is a phenomenon where if you're thinking about something or you're studying or reading something or planning on doing something exactly, roughly an hour from when you think of it, you'll forget. Because the information in your brain, when you're thinking about it consciously, gets stored in short-term memory, and then it goes to long-term memory, but in that hour, roughly hour period, starting an hour after you think about the information, in that transition period, it's very hard to recall what you were thinking about unless you see some sort of stimulus that reminds you of what it was you were thinking about. But I will talk about something that I've been thinking about or was thinking about this morning. It is a little bit darker. The sun's come out now, but it was so dark today that I thought maybe we might have a storm. Now, I think I've talked about rain a little bit in the Seattle area. We have small drops. We have lots of small drops, but we don't have big drop rain, which is what gives the feeling of strong rain. Have I used quotey fingers twice now in this video? Anyway, a strong or powerful rain is usually the result of large drops. And it takes a very specific kind of climate to develop those large drops. And you see that a lot more in the Midwest. I think you see it a bit more, ironically, in deserts when it rains. It tends to be very large drops for a very short period of time. But sometimes those large drops end up being flash floods, which I know the Southwest has had some trouble with in its history. When I was in Disney World in Florida, it rained every day. Almost every day, but I stayed out of it most of the time. So I don't remember exactly what kind of rain they get down there, although they get a lot of rain. And when I was in Hawaii, in the 15 minutes it rained the whole time I was in Hawaii, it seemed like it was pretty medium-sized, but there was lots of it, and it fell very quickly. So it was probably actually slightly larger than average, larger than I'm used to here. But yeah, large drops gives you the sense of a strong storm, a powerful storm. But real thunderstorms are something we don't get around here. We sometimes get hard rain, but we very, very rarely get real thunder and lightning. And I sort of miss that. In the summer in Minnesota, where I grew up, it would get very humid all week long during summer break. And that humidity would eventually form this overcast layer that just made the entire sky feel like it was glowing. So it would be warm, but it wouldn't be clear, and it would be humid to the point where you just felt like you had trouble breathing, and it was miserable. And we had air conditioning in Minnesota because even though it's very, very cold during the winter, it can get very warm and very muggy in the summer, so people just have air conditioning. They just do. We don't have that in Seattle. Some houses have air conditioning, but it's not considered standard. This house that I live in does not have air conditioning. It never has. But in Minnesota, you would get these humid weeks where it's just torture to go outside and play, and I still went outside and rode my bike. I rode it miles and miles down to a lake, around the lake, back again. It was probably a 10-mile trip. But then at the end of the week, my dad says it was like clockwork sometimes. At the end of the week, all that humidity and all those overcast skies accumulated into cumulus clouds, cumulonimbus clouds that were ripe with rainwater and thunder and lightning. And so on like Friday nights typically, sometimes Saturday nights or even Sundays, the rains would come, and it would be a storm. It would be a real storm. Not messing around. There'd be thunder and lightning. Sometimes there was even wind. And you got a couple of them in the spring. In fact, it's possible you got more storms and more rain in the spring. April showers bring May flowers and all that. But you didn't notice them because there was sort of a constant, rain, sun, back and forth. Well, in Minnesota, April, you'll still have snow on the ground melting. It usually doesn't clean up entirely until May. And then by June, you're starting to get into that humid weather. And so it's right about June when you start getting these thunderstorms, and they are magnificent. I was scared of thunder and lightning when I was a real young kid. I really was. My sister even more so, although she was famous for sleeping through some of the nastiest weather we've ever had. And the change. When it gets hot here in the summer, little known fact, if you're not from the Seattle area, it'll get hot in May and there just won't be any rain until June. June is typically a month where things cool off and get cloudy, and it's kind of gross, and it feels more like March. April, you get some rain, you get sun breaks. May, you get a lot more sun with very little rain. June, you get clouds and rain again. And then July and August can be very hot with very little rain. We had a drought last year where it didn't rain for it was like 2 months in a row. I think we didn't have rain. And it felt like we had fires. And it was just miserable. It felt unlivable at times. I'm a big guy, and this house gets hot in the summer. You'll definitely hear me complaining about that in a couple of months, assuming I still do this, and I have every intention to. I have every intention to finish up my year's worth of these videos, going through every season, finally finishing up in the dead of winter again. And that's what I get for having my birthday in the middle of winter. But anyway, these storms that would come in Minnesota were just a treat. They were fantastic forces of nature that I didn't have adequate appreciation of when I was young, and it was all I knew. But having come here and lived here and not seen that, and just had the sort of dreary, constant drizzle that Seattle is famous for, I miss those storms. I especially miss them in the middle of summer, right in the middle of July and August, when it's just like I just need something to come and rinse away the heat, because that is what happens. The storm itself is wonderful, but it's the next day, especially in Minnesota with all that humidity, gone. All of the water that had been in the air had accumulated and then fell, and everything was wet and moist and cool. And you could go outside and enjoy yourself. Usually the sun was back Monday. Monday was usually the best because it was still a little cool, but the sun was out and the sky was clear. And then by Tuesday, it's very warm, and then by Wednesday, all that humidity was starting to come back in full force. Thursday and Friday again, very nasty, until the storm came in again. And the rains came. Sometimes it rained all weekend, which was, miserable when you're a kid and you want to go out and play during your summer vacation. But I started to feel, even back then, I started to see how wonderful those were, because they did keep us inside where it was cool. I got to play my video games, and I played with all the toys that I had when I was a kid. I did a lot of my building with Legos and the old Constructs building system. So, fondness for a storm. Yeah. I find myself missing a lot of things these days. But I'm finding a lot of new things that I enjoy. I've been having a blast with Elite Dangerous, and now Warframe is actually pretty fun. Although it's got its issues. But I'm also looking forward to new Gundam Breaker, which comes out in June. And a couple other games in the pipeline that look like they could be pretty good. I'll tell you what's given me a lot of thought is this Labo thing. I mentioned Legos and Constructs and a couple other things that I've built stuff out of Connects. The idea of a video game where you're building stuff out of cardboard is really intriguing. And although I don't really have room for all these things, they're quite big. I don't know if you've seen them, But like this motorbike thing in one of the packs is, you know, big enough for me to use without feeling like I'm playing with a little kid's toy. And I don't know how long they would take to build. Probably a little bit longer than a 10-minute video like this. But we'll see. We'll see. I do have a Nintendo Switch, so maybe it's in the works. But whatever. I've hit my 10 minutes. I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.